May I play for food? The shy voice of the 12-year-old girl echoed through the lobby of the Continental Hotel, cutting through the elegant conversations like a sharp blade. People stopped talking, turning to face the little black girl who dared to interrupt the city's most exclusive charity cocktail party. Amelia Washington stood at the entrance to the main hall, her large, hopeful eyes fixed on the Steinway grand piano gleaming beneath the crystal chandeliers. Her simple, slightly baggy clothes contrasted starkly with the designer dresses and tailored suits around her. She clutched a worn backpack to her chest as if it were a protective shield. "How did that kid get in here?" whispered a platinum-haired woman, clutching her champagne glass tightly. "Where's security?" The event was a gala to raise funds for underprivileged youth, an irony that did not escape Amelia, who had spent the last week sleeping in different shelters. She had heard about the event when she passed by the hotel entrance earlier, and something inside her compelled her to try to get in. Victoria Sterling, the event organizer and heir to a family fortune, approached with measured steps. At 45, she epitomized the city's social elite, educated, refined, and utterly convinced of her moral superiority. "Darling," she said with a condescending smile, "this is no place for you. There's a McDonald's 2 blocks from here." "I just wanted to play," Amelia repeated, her voice gaining unexpected firmness. "Just one song in exchange for a plate of food." Laughter began to ripple through the crowd. "She thinks she can play the piano," scoffed a man in a navy blue suit. "She probably doesn't even know which key is C." "It's cute how imaginative these kids are," added another woman, shaking her head with feigned pity. "They watch a movie and think they can do anything." But Amelia didn't look down. There was something in her posture, a quiet dignity, a silent confidence that seemed out of place in a child of her situation, as if she knew something that everyone else there was completely unaware of. Dr. Robert Chun, a renowned pianist and one of the judges of national competitions, watched the scene from the back of the hall. He had noticed how the girl's eyes fixed on the piano with a reverence he rarely saw, even in advanced students. There was recognition there, familiarity. "Victoria," Dr. Chun approached. "Maybe we should let her play. After all, we're here to help talented young people, aren't we?" Victoria laughed. A crystalline, cruel sound. "Robert, please." "Look at her. Children like this don't have access to music education. It's impossible." What none of them knew was that Amelia had grown up for the first 8 years of her life in a home where music was as essential as breathing. Her grandmother, a classical pianist who never achieved the recognition she deserved because of the color of her skin, had been her first and only teacher. When her grandmother died and Amelia ended up in the foster care system, she carried with her not only the pain of loss, but a talent that even she did not fully understand. "I accept," Amelia said simply, her voice clear and firm. Victoria crossed her arms and grinned cruelly. "Perfect. You will play one song. We will choose it. If you fail, you leave immediately and never return." James Morrison smirked. "Let her play Beethoven's Für Elise. Everyone thinks they can play that." The crowd laughed. A perfect trap. Amelia walked to the piano, adjusted the bench perfectly. Dr. Chun froze. Those were not beginner movements. She placed her hands on the keys. The first note rang. Pure, confident, delicate, perfect, and the room fell silent. Amelia began the main melody of Für Elise, and every note that flowed from her hands was like a small miracle. There was no hesitation, no technical error. The music emerged naturally as if she and the piano were part of a single organism. But there was something else, an emotional maturity in the interpretation that left Dr. Chun completely stunned. The way she phrased the melodic passages, how she controlled the dynamics, how she allowed the silence between the notes to speak as much as the music itself. It was the work of a mature artist, not an untrained child. The hall had fallen completely silent. The champagne glasses remained motionless in the guests' hands. The conversation ceased. Even the waiters stopped moving. Everyone was mesmerized by that small figure at the piano, creating music of unexpected and breathtaking beauty. Victoria felt a growing uneasiness in her stomach. This was not going according to plan. The public humiliation she had orchestrated was turning into something completely different. something that was totally beyond her control. As Amelia played, lost in the music that flowed through her like a force of nature, a single question echoed in the minds of everyone present. Who was this girl really? Dr. Chun watched in fascination as Amelia navigated the most complex passages of Fur Elise. The descending arpeggio passage, which stumped even advanced students, flowed from her fingers like crystal-clear water. Each note had weight and purpose. Each pause breathed with mature musicality. He watched her control the sustain pedal with the precision of a professional concert pianist. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. Victoria, desperate, tried to speak loudly enough to interrupt the moment. "She must have memorized this from YouTube. Kids copy everything these days." But her voice trembled with insecurity. It was clear to everyone that what Amelia was doing could not be copied in a week or a month. This was the product of years, maybe thousands of hours of dedication. Amelia reached the emotional climax of the piece, her hands flying, dancing, breathing with the keys as if they were alive. The audience was frozen in awe. Her grandmother Betty's voice echoed in her memory. "Music doesn't lie, my dear. When you play from the heart, people listen with their soul." The final notes of Fur Elise floated through the silent room like feathers. Then stillness. Amelia held her hands suspended in the air for a moment before letting them fall gently to her sides. She turned toward the crowd, calm, composed, transformed. The room erupted. Applause crashed like thunder. People who had mocked her moments ago were now staring in disbelief. Some even stood, clapping louder, humbled by the truth they had tried not to see. Dr. Chun approached slowly, eyes glistening. "Child," he said softly, "where did you learn to play like that? Who taught you?" "My grandmother," Amelia replied. Her name was Betty Washington. The name hit Dr. Chun like lightning. His breath caught. "Betty Washington," he repeated, stunned. "Are you her granddaughter?" Amelia nodded. Gasps rippled throughout the room. "Betty Washington was a genius," Dr. Chun said, voice shaking. "A prodigy denied her place in the world because of prejudice. She trained some of the greatest pianists in the country quietly, privately because the world refused to see her greatness." Silence, thick and heavy, filled the room again, but this time it was not disbelief. It was shame, realization, reflection. Victoria tried to keep her composure. "That doesn't change anything," she stammered weakly. But everyone could hear the crack in her voice. Everyone had seen the truth. Amelia did not gloat. She simply looked at them, and in her eyes was not anger, but a deeper strength. A strength that came from struggle, from pain, from legacy. Her music had spoken, and it had told the world who she was, a child they had tried to dismiss, a legacy they had refused to honor, and a prodigy they could no longer ignore. Dr. Chun's voice trembled as he faced the stunned audience. "Do you understand what we just witnessed?" he said softly, yet every person in the hall heard him. "This young girl carries the legacy of one of the greatest pianists this country never got to honor. Tonight, she reminded us what true talent looks like. Not packaged, not purchase-born, nurtured in love and carried through struggle." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Expensive shoes, glittering jewelry, perfect hair, and yet every one of them suddenly felt small. Victoria opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came. The superiority she wrapped herself in like silk now felt like chains, tight, suffocating, humiliating. A wealthy man near the front whispered, "We almost threw her out." Another woman wiped her eyes. "She only asked for food," she said softly. "And we laughed at her." Amelia stood slowly, her hands still tingling from the keys, her heart pounding not from fear, but from release, as if she'd been silent for years and finally found her voice again. Dr. Chun gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't belong in shelters," he said. "You belong on stages." Gasps again, excitement, whispers. A shift in the air so strong it was almost visible. Amelia's voice was quiet but steady. "My grandmother told me music was the one thing no one could take from me." She looked around the room at the chandeliers, the marble floors, the glittering gowns, and she was right. A pause heavy, powerful. Victoria's face flushed red. Anger? Embarrassment? Both. This doesn't change the fact that she interrupted an elite event, she snapped weakly. Dr. Chun turned to her, his voice now firm and cutting as steel. What you call elite, I call blind. Tonight, a child you tried to push away forced us to confront who we really are. The crowd murmured, many nodding. A tall man in a tuxedo stepped forward. I'll sponsor her education, he announced. Then another woman added, and I will provide temporary housing for her immediately. More. Voices followed. I'll donate a grand piano for her. Training. We should set up a scholarship in her. Grandmother's name. She deserves a chance better than the ones we had. Offers poured in as opportunities that once seemed impossible, now rising like dawn on the horizon. Victoria tried a final, desperate defense. You all can't be serious. She's a homeless girl. She is a prodigy, Dr. Chun interrupted. A genius. And geniuses come from everywhere, even the places you refuse to look. Amelia's eyes glistened, but she did not cry. She stood tall, small, hungry, tired, yet somehow larger than anyone in the hall. She had given them music, and in return, she had taken something far greater, their blindness. And in its place, she planted truth raw, undeniable, unforgettable. Amelia stepped down from the bench slowly, almost cautiously, as if she were afraid the moment would vanish if she moved too quickly. The polished floor felt cold under her worn shoes, but she didn't flinch. She walked with quiet dignity, the kind that no wealth, no privilege, no fine dress could imitate. A woman approached her elegant, wealthy, and trembling, as though she'd seen a miracle. My dear, your grandmother must be so proud, she whispered. Amelia nodded softly. She always told me the world would hear me one day. She looked down, her voice barely a breath. I didn't know it would be today. Dr. Chun smiled, warmth spreading through his tired, scholarly eyes. Sometimes destiny doesn't knock, he said. Sometimes it walks in uninvited and sits at a piano. Laughter, gentle, genuine, moved through the room, breaking tension like sunlight breaking storm clouds. Then from the back, a shaky voice called out, "Play again!" Voices joined. Yes! One more! Please! Amelia blinked, stunned. Hours ago, she was just a hungry girl looking for a warm plate. Now, people in diamonds and silk were asking, begging to hear her again. She looked at the piano, her small hand resting on the polished wood. I don't know many songs, she admitted softly. Just the ones Grandma taught me. That is enough, Dr. Chun said. Play her heart again, and that will be more than this room has ever deserved. Amelia sat again, a deep breath, fingers poised. This time she chose a piece her grandmother whispered to her during nights they couldn't sleep, when cold air crept into their shelter blanket, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The first note sank into the room like a secret. Each chord rose like a prayer, gentle, haunting, aching with the weight of dreams denied and hope unbroken. And in those notes lived every night she went to bed hungry, every whisper of encouragement from Grandma Betty, every stare of judgment from strangers who never asked her name. Victoria stumbled back, pale and shaken, as though the music itself were judging her. She tried to leave, but the room shifted, bodies stepping aside, eyes turning away from her as if she carried shame like a scent. No one stopped her. No one even cared she was leaving, because all that mattered, all that existed, was the girl at the piano. Child who had nothing, and yet somehow possessed everything, and as the final note trembled into silence, the world did not applaud immediately. This time, they simply felt, because some music demands not clapping, but reverence. For a long moment, no one breathed. It was as though the room was afraid to disturb the spirit that lingered in the air, a spirit made of love, sacrifice, hunger, and a little girl's unbreakable hope. Then, slowly, reverently, people rose from their seats once again, not with noise, not with the frantic applause of before, but with quiet honor, a standing ovation born from humility. Some bowed their heads, others wiped tears quickly, ashamed to be seen crying by strangers, yet unable to stop. Dr. Chun pressed his hand over his heart, his voice cracked. I have spent 40 years searching for true talent, he whispered, barely able to speak. And tonight... It walked in wearing worn shoes and a brave heart. Amelia didn't fully understand the weight of his words, but she felt them. They wrapped around her like her grandmother's arms once did, warm, safe, filled with pride. A reporter who had been quietly observing stepped forward. "Little girl," she said gently, "what is your dream?" Amelia hesitated. No one had asked her that in a long time, maybe ever. She glanced at the piano, then at the crowd, then at the empty space beside her, the space where Grandma Betty should have been. "My dream," her voice trembled, but she lifted her chin, steadying herself, "is to make the world hear her name." Silence broke soft gasps, a choked sob somewhere in the crowd. And in that moment, Amelia wasn't just a girl. She was a legacy breathing, living, playing for someone who never got her stage. Dr. Chun knelt in front of her, eye level. "You will," he promised, "and I will help you." He turned sharply toward the crowd, his voice suddenly carrying command. "We will start a scholarship in the name of Betty Washington," he declared, "and this child, this prodigy, will be the first recipient." Applause burst again, not wild, but strong, firm, respectful. Amelia's eyes widened with disbelief. "A scholarship?" she whispered. "For me?" "For you," Dr. Chun said. "For your grandmother?" For every voice the world tried not to hear. A woman stepped forward. "And housing," she added softly. "Tonight, she sleeps in a bed, not a shelter." "I will provide nutrition and daily support," offered another. "I will sponsor her concerts. I will create a foundation." Voices rose offering, giving, correcting what they had once ignored. And in the corner of the room, half forgotten, Victoria stood trembling. Her carefully built world, reputation, status, pride, collapsing like glass. She tried to speak, but her voice was lost under the tide of compassion and redemption. Amelia looked up, tears pooling, but her voice remained strong. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." The room answered not with applause, but with humanity, because sometimes the loudest victories are the quiet ones. A child lifted, a legacy honored, a heart finally seen. Amelia stood there, not knowing whether to smile or cry. Just hours ago, she was invisible, another child in worn clothes, hungry and tired, someone the world looked past without seeing. And now, the world was looking, really looking. A gentle voice spoke from the crowd. "She's so small, and yet she carries a universe," someone else whispered. Her grandmother must be smiling in heaven. Amelia felt warmth in her chest, a warmth she had forgotten existed. For so long, she knew cold nights and empty stomachs, whispered prayers and silent wishes. But right now, she knew something different. Hope. A man with silver hair approached her, holding a velvet violin case. "For years I searched for the meaning of art," he said quietly. "Tonight, I found it." He bowed to her, not out of politeness, but respect. Greatness does not need permission to exist. The room murmured in agreement. Victoria, still frozen in the corner, clenched her fists. This wasn't how powerful people were treated. This wasn't how she was supposed to feel, small, forgotten, swallowed by her own pride. She tried a last spark of defiance. She shouldn't get special treatment just because she played a song. But this time, no one responded to her, not even to argue. She was not worth the breath. Silence answered her, a silence sharper than any insult. Dr. Chun looked at Amelia again. "We begin tomorrow," he said warmly. "Lessons, meals, a safe home. Your journey starts now." Amelia swallowed hard. For the first time in her life, the future wasn't a dark hallway. It was a door wide open. "I'll work hard," she whispered. "I promise. I'll make her proud. You already have," Dr. Chun said softly. A woman near the front dabbed her eyes. "This child walked in with nothing and gave us more than we've ever given anyone." Another voice replied, "She didn't ask for wealth, just kindness. And in return," someone added, "she gave us greatness." Amelia looked at the piano one last time, the instrument that was her voice, her refuge, her secret friend during every lonely night. She gently touched the keys, whispering, "Thank you." And in that touch there was no sound, yet somehow the room heard music again. People did not remember what they wore that night. They did not remember the food or the fashion or the sparkle. They remembered a hungry girl who sat at a piano and fed their souls. That night, Amelia didn't return to the cold shelter hall with creaking beds and thin blankets. She didn't curl up on the hard cot beside strangers trying to survive another night. Instead, she sat in the back seat of a warm car, city lights passing like falling stars outside the window. A kind woman, the one who offered her housing, sat beside her with a gentle smile. "Are you nervous, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Amelia nodded. "A little. I've never stayed in someone's house before." The woman's voice was warm, mother-like. "You're safe now. You deserve gentleness." Those words hit Amelia harder than applause ever could. You deserve gentleness. Nobody had ever said that to her. When they reached the home, the woman led her inside. The house smelled like fresh bread and warm light, something Amelia only ever read about in books left in library corners. "Your room is upstairs," the woman said. "Everything is clean, and there are new clothes on the bed for you." Amelia blinked, frozen. "A room? For me?" "Yes," the woman whispered. "Every child deserves a place where they belong." Amelia walked slowly up the stairs, like she was afraid the illusion would break if she moved too fast. The room was small but beautiful. Soft blankets, warm lamp, a window overlooking the city, and on the desk, a framed picture of a piano. Her throat tightened. Her chest ached in a way that wasn't pain. It was relief so deep it hurt. She touched the blanket, soft like clouds. "Grandma," she whispered, "we made it." She climbed into the bed, unfamiliar softness wrapping around her. For the first time in her life, she didn't sleep holding herself tight for warmth. For the first time, she didn't listen for footsteps or whispers in the dark. She slept like a child who finally had permission to dream. Sunlight touched her face gently, waking her like a song. For a moment, she panicked. Unfamiliar walls, a warm bed, silence. Then she remembered. The piano, the applause, the scholarship, hope. She pressed her palms together and whispered, "Thank you, Grandma. I will not waste this." Downstairs, breakfast waited. Eggs, fruit, warm toast. Food she used to only imagine when her stomach cried at night. "Eat." Slowly, the woman said kindly. "There will always be more now." Those words were a gift more precious than gold. Across the city, in a mansion dripping with wealth but suddenly hollow as ice, Victoria sat alone. News articles had already begun to spread. Homeless child stuns audience with genius piano performance. Granddaughter of hidden legend discovered at charity event. But beneath them were comments too sharp to ignore. Shame on the woman who tried to humiliate her. Money doesn't make you human. You can't buy class or talent. Victoria threw her phone aside, face pale, power gone, reputation cracked. The world no longer applauding her, but the girl she tried to break. For the first time, she understood. Cruelty has consequences, and kindness has power. A beginning, not an ending. Amelia arrived at the piano school that afternoon. A glossy black grand piano stood waiting. Like destiny itself, Dr. Chun smiled at her warmly. "Are you ready to start your future?" She took a deep breath. Steady, brave, strong. "Yes," she whispered. "For her." "For me?" She placed her fingers on the keys. This time, she didn't play because she needed to prove herself. She didn't play because she was hungry or desperate for a chance. She played because she belonged, and with the first note, the room filled not just with music but promise.